Okay, so I don't know if you've had it, but I experienced it. Last night was 2 days in, and my mind was shot, just completely shot. I started going through all the exit slips last night, and I got shotter, because just like that whole idea of differentiation, I had 700 responses to look at. I'm thinking, I want to respond to that, I want to respond to that, I want to respond to that. But a couple of big patterns showed up last night. So actually, what is posted today, and if you go into, again, the schedule, click on my name, there it is. What is posted was not what I had yesterday prepared 2 weeks ago. Scrapped it all. Because of where we were yesterday. That cognitive overload, I think, was starting to hit. And then we're asking you to go back and work on your SIP, your school improvement plan. So let me say this right now before we go any further. Don't let sense of audience, knowing that you'll be sharing those tomorrow, equal you must be finished. You must have it. If you share a learned product, you don't want feedback. If you share a learned product, we're saying, especially as teachers, we've got it the way we want it. The sharing part tomorrow is not for you. The sharing part is for people who look at yours and go, we didn't think of that. The sharing tomorrow is so we can steal from the school improvement plan. And Jan's going to talk about it more today as we close, but we changed the presentation for this afternoon because of where we were yesterday. I am so excited because even I, as a presenter, was getting the cognitive overload. And then the panel spoke this morning. And so Dan, where's Dan? Dan? That's the moment I needed, my friend, because the head needed to say, don't worry if you don't have it yet. The heart's got it. The heart's got it. I know what we want. So we're gonna change a little bit of the work. I know you spent a good bit of time this morning with your school improvement plan, but we're going to even change the way we talk about that today. So in response to the last 2 days, which again I think have been incredible, and I've been really excited and honored to be a part of it, we're going to go back to the C5s and just say this. Our heart wants the C5W because it's what we want for children. Our head gets ahead of our heart sometime and gets overwhelmed with how are we going to get there. You know what? You don't need to get there. You don't need to worry about getting there. You just need to know, where do I go next? Next is the most important thing. So as we head to that, I know that we're in the middle of the heavy lifting, and as we work together and then move it forward back to our school, it's going to evolve. Just trust the process. If you have good people on your team, you're going to be fine. If you look at your table, are you seated with good people? Then you're going to be fine. Now, if you are looking around thinking, I need to move, go ahead. Go ahead and move, but just tell your friends it's because you couldn't see the screen. That way it doesn't hurt their feelings, okay? We want to have a nice place in our conflict continuum, but we don't want to be just false either. So we are going to take a 10-minute break today because yesterday, I think, especially for you guys, by the time we got in here, it was just overwhelming. And then the reality of snacks happened. And again, evolutionarily speaking, I know that food wins. So the snacks are not going to be over here today. So we're going to take a break exactly at 2 o'clock. Feel free, if I am mid-sentence, to just get up and go, okay? But we're going to be precise with our time. We're going to take exactly 10 minutes because we do have a lot that I think we need to share in order to feel safer, in order to let the heart and the head lead together, not one ahead of the other. Okay, that said, I may have said this yesterday, it's actually my signature line when I email. Because I get to work with schools, I have the great luxury of working with schools who say they want to change their practice. And what I know about teachers is we always want what's best for our kids, and so we always want to be honing our craft. But sometimes when we hone our craft, we are not given the opportunity to practice the change that we're after. And if you can't practice the change knowing that it could be a disaster, but nothing bad will happen, then we don't practice well. You have to practice with reflection after the practice so that the moment of practice leads to something. Again, living with musicians, I know the balance of practice, something that needs to be perfect, and then there's this other side that needs to be musical and meaningful. And it's all about balance. If you just practice the small stuff and the steps and the procedures, you'll never be able to play the symphony. But if you never play the symphony, you never have a reason for this. So again, we're going to play for balance today. A couple of big things came up yesterday from the exit tickets. And one of those was, I'm struggling to decide what in my content merits engagement. What should be made more meaningful? Because you just said, you said yesterday that we've only got so much time, we've got so many standards, so which ones should I power up? Which should remain just accepted and practiced? And what is the relationship between the school improvement plan and C5W? Well, we have been asked to incorporate C5W into the plan. I want to be real careful what that means. We don't know what it means. That's what it means. This is a moment of you guys decide, what does it mean to make sure we're giving attention to these big 6 ideas of what we want for our children? So what are some of the examples of the goals we could have, John? So we're going to do that today. We'll start with the first question, recognizing that we might be frustrated. If you experience some frustration, again, which I would have expected naturally at the end of day 2, we said in the auditorium the first day, we are not designed for 100% engagement. We need to get up and move and walk away and say, I can't take anymore, I can't accept anymore, I can't struggle with anymore. And we are front-loading a lot of stuff, so I understand that. But if you're feeling frustrated about any of this, one of those frustrating you right now? If you're thinking about this, because this is who we are as teachers, well, I don't know what the school's going to do, but I'm making decisions about how I'm going to teach next year. I know that that's happening too. But if you're not sure where to go or what to do, it's because of the cognitive demand of this work. When we change our own practice, I'm afraid what happens a lot of times in education or in professional development is we ask people to change their practice at a level 2. I am here, I am the trainer. Do this, do this, do this, do this. And that doesn't build a practitioner. That builds a compliant robot. One of the things that I really appreciate in the group that I've met this week is you are not all the same. And we shouldn't try. That's not our goal, to all be the same. Our goal is to be figuring out how we do this with our own style and our own personality. Because we cannot override our style. We cannot override our personality. They're a part of who we've been for 37 years. Okay, 55 years, all right, yeah. And then the reality is we are now asking that instead of a level 2, wow, that was a bunch of slides. This work is a 3-4, you got to make sense. This is why the school improvement plan should not be done now. You should not start to proceduralize while you're making sense. Does that make sense? Okay, so again, I wish we could have gotten to you a little bit before you worked a little bit this morning, but that's okay, because if you felt the frustration, we're giving credit to that now. And we just now are posting the objective. Because if we had sat in here and said all that without some of the cognitive dissonance that has occurred over the last 2 days, then you wouldn't have, I don't know if people would have believed that that was really what we're after. The goal this week is not to know the goal. The goal this week is to know the vision. And we can articulate that vision. We had the great opportunity. We did this really cool thing in my family. It started when my kids were much younger. When Dad started traveling and getting miles, we decided we could take a nice vacation. When I started doing this and started gaining the miles, I had one in college, one graduating high school, and one still a sophomore in college, in high school. So I decided we'd take a trip, but here's how you take the trip. Here's how Dad pays for stuff. If you're going to go with us on vacation, you have to bring 2 books you've already read. And you have to advocate why somebody else in the family of 5 should read one of those books. And you will have to, by halfway through the trip, have read somebody else's book. It's just the teacher in me. We're going to read some literature. And my kids now are grown and have spouses and significant others and all kinds of baggage. And we just went to to Maine for a week, for 8 days, 8 of us all together. But my new son-in-law figured this out 2 years ago, that you don't get to take the trip until there's a book. So he had already read a book. And 2 weeks before we left, he said, I've already got my books, John. I've already got my books. I said, well, excellent. He said, I want to tell you about them now. I said, no, we do that when there's nothing else around us and we get to relax. He said, no, I really want you to read my book. I don't know if that's sense of audience or what, but for some reason, he was really about me reading the book. I'm not even, I really think he actually picked the book months ago, knowing that it would be a book that I would want to read, just to enhance our relationship. I love that about him, love that about him. If we get over here to this making sense moment, the goal of our trip was the family to be together. We didn't get lost in what are we going to do on Monday, what are we going to do on Tuesday, what are we going to do on Wednesday, what are we going to do on Thursday. Knowing that 8 of us are all different, we did solicit input. Everybody's leaving their job to get away for a while, and we're going to be together. What do you want to do that is about being away from your job? What is it you want to do that's about being together? And then the reality of a family vacation is, sometimes I want to get away from my job and you. And then sometimes I want to be with you. So we have to, again, find the balance piece. Cognitive dissonance occurs when what we thought was going to happen isn't happening, or what we're very familiar with is starting to change. The brain wants to make sense, and it likes to have the safety of knowing. So this is where we are. I'd like you to take just a moment and read this quote by Peter Block. I really like this quote, and I wonder if it wasn't where we were yesterday and maybe even a little bit today. Take just a moment. Not much structure. At your table, react to the Peter Block quote. Say whatever you're thinking about what Peter said. So I didn't know the work of Peter Block. I don't know if you know the work of Peter Block. I did not. This is from one of Taylor's books. This is my son-in-law's book. He knows how the family works, so when I said, no, I'm not going to read your book yet, it's not time, he slipped it to my wife and said, Susan, you're going to love this book. I read this book thinking about you the whole time. He's really good at working us. But my son-in-law, his job is cybersecurity. So when he talks to me about his job, I don't really get it. But I learned this about him this year. John, my job is to go in and tell people we can fix this when I don't know how we're going to do it. He said, because somebody figured out how to get around everything and make a mess. My job is to figure out how we're going to fix this. And he says, Peter Block is my mantra for my clients. The answer to how is yes. Yes. Can you do this, Taylor Shoots? Can you save our banking system that has hacked into our customers' finances? Yes. How will you do that? Yes. How long will it take? He says, I don't know yet. But the answer is yes. Yes might come in 2 days, 2 hours, a month, but we're going to be able to do this. And I think that's what we've got to look forward to in the school improvement plan. The answer to what's in the plan is yes. Now, let's talk about no for a minute. I don't know where you are in your PLCs, but I will tell you where I am with PLCs. I have loved the idea of people coming together and collaborating so that the end product is better than the individual contractors. To that end, a lot of schools develop PLCs. I often wonder, which letter are you mostly? P, L, or C? Because sometimes we say, you belong to this PLC because you all teach 4th grade. That's a C focus. Since we are already in this neighborhood, we're a PLC. Sometimes PLCs can be about learning. I'm in a PLC that is working on engagement because I want more engagement in my classroom. So I'm on a PLC that is kindergarten teachers, fourth grade teachers, a high school teacher, and a principal. So we have an ad hoc L PLC. I find a lot of PLCs don't work P. They don't work professionally. They are compliant. So a number of years ago, Rick and Becky DeFore hired Dr. Jim Garver and myself to come in because they wanted a metric to see how could we evaluate the effect of a PLC to the learner in the classroom. So we built another version of walking, but mostly this is what we learned as we started visiting schools, because they would send us to schools that had spent a lot of money and a lot of time and energy on developing the PLC concept and structuring it and scheduling it and making sure there's our agenda, and they weren't moving. So we were looking literally at dysfunction. And by looking at failure, we should be able to see what success looks like. And so Jim and I found 4 things that kept showing up. When a group of adults, well-meaning, well-intentioned, or even coerced and manipulated and captive. Either way, because that's like a family on vacation. It all sounded good when we planned it, but now we're caught. The reality is when it's not working well, one of 4 things is missing in the process. We use the acronym REAL. R stands for reflection. Reflection is hugely important in a collaborative system or in a family, because if people don't get to be heard, they go out in the parking lot and talk later. Can you imagine family members doing that? I couldn't believe it. And when we got in the bedroom, I told my wife, I was so mad about what happened. Oh, wait, I'm doing that. I should have said it when we were all sitting there in the living room instead of in the bedroom to my wife where it was safe, because she's not my issue. It's what happened just there in the card game that made me uncomfortable. So we have to have the safety to say, here's what I'm thinking. I don't want it to hurt your feelings, but I also don't want to bottle mine up. So I need to say what's truthfully on my mind. And so I see people who don't allow this to happen in their PLCs, and that's dysfunction. Or I see people who only allow this to happen. Let's just tell our feelings. We've been telling our feelings for the last 3 years in PLC. No wonder it's not working, because we're just telling our feelings. Second dysfunction, and I think this one's a really big one, really big, and that is experimentation. Do we give ourselves permission to do something that we were not sure if it will work? And this is why I get a little bothered by a school improvement plan, because sometimes it says, we will do this. Well, we don't know if that's going to work. Well, by May, it will work. You know what? A better school improvement process would be, let's check together at the end of September how we're doing. Well, what's our end goal? Don't know yet. I mean, there was some applause when I said it's hard to plan a whole week's lesson, because if Monday doesn't go the way it was supposed to, Tuesday's lesson is for naught. We have to be responsive. So I think this is this idea of we've got to say, we're going to try this. What's the definition of a hypothesis? What do we teach kids? A hypothesis is just an educated guess. Wrong definition. Wrong definition. A hypothesis is guessing and then getting educated after the guess. Make a guess and then see what you learn from that guess. And if you have to revise it, that's an educated hypothesis. If you had a hypothesis and you tried it and it was wrong, that's still an educated guess. But even when we ask kids in kindergarten or first grade to predict, we ask them, unfortunately sometimes, so did you find out how was your prediction right? There's no such thing as a right prediction or a wrong prediction. There is a prediction that needs to be revised or has been validated. If it was logical to start with, I'll give an example. When I taught kindergarten, one of my favorite books was The Enormous Watermelon. And there are a number of versions of The Enormous Turnip or The Giant Turnip or The Enormous Watermelon. But we were reading The Enormous Watermelon. Little Miss Muffet sat on her tuffet, eating her curds and whey. And then she decided she'd rather have a garden. So she went out and planted a garden. And she toiled and toiled. She planted watermelon seeds, for that is her favorite. And over the summer, the watermelon grew and grew and grew until at the end of the watermelon, there was an enormous watermelon. Little Miss Muffet decided it was time to eat that watermelon, so she went out to the garden and she pulled and she pulled and she pulled, but she could not lift it, for it was an enormous watermelon. So the next day, her friend, Little Bo Peep, came over, and together they decided they wanted that watermelon. So together they worked, and they pulled, and they pulled, and they pulled, but they could not lift it, for it was an enormous watermelon. Sit down. So the next day, their friends Jack and Jill came together, and together the friends worked together, and they pulled, and they pulled, and they pulled, but they could not lift it, for it was an enormous watermelon. So the next day, some more friends came, the butcher, the baker, and the candlestick maker. And together the friends pulled and pulled and pulled, but they could not lift it, for it was. You're not going to believe what happened next. You're not going to believe it. You're not going to believe it. Tell your neighbor what you think happened next. By the way, boys and girls, this is called a prediction. You must find a pattern in the text we have read so far and extend that pattern. Do not end the pattern. That's called resolution, and that's not in our standards. We are going to predict, okay? Don't solve her problem, just extend the author's pattern. So everybody think about an answer that will extend it. You got it? Oh, don't talk yet. We're going to go to Bear in the Chair in a minute. Okay, turn to your neighbor and tell your friends what could happen on the next page. Ready, go. How are your friends doing? Are we predicting well? 3 of my friends on the carpet just shared their responses. Let me let you hear them and you tell me how they're doing. So Miguel just said, so the next day, more people came and they couldn't lift it. How'd he do? Is it true that people have been coming and unable to lift it? Cool. Melissa Sue said, some additional nursery rhyme characters came. They worked collaboratively, and yet they pulled and pulled and pulled, but they were unable to lift it, for it was an enormous watermelon. Did she extend a pattern? Okay. Bubba says to me, 4. I'm like, I'm sorry, what's your prediction? 4! I don't get it, Bubba. So the first day, Little Bo Peep came. The second day, Jack and Jill came. The third day, the butcher, the baker, the candlestick maker came. And on the 4th day, 4 people are going to come. Here's the child who saw the numerical pattern that I completely missed. And another kid says, Grover comes. Well, Grover's not a fairy. You know what? It doesn't matter. Another character, you found a pattern and extended it. That's prediction. So experimentation is just that. Because I know this, I think this. We don't know how it's going to work, but we are not going in illogical. We're going in logically, with reasoning. With reasoning and justice for all. Because with collaboration, justice comes because we say, well, that makes sense, but what about this? Hadn't thought about that. Hopefully collaboration is exponential rather than additive. Third dysfunction of dysfunctional teams is we analyze the wrong stuff. We either don't look at the right data or we analyze the wrong stuff. We have been looking at test scores forever. I have a son who's playing with the Houston Symphony, an incredible musician. If we had predicted based upon his first 3rd grade ACT-TAP exam, he'd be in prison. It's not the only measure. It's not the only data worth looking at. So we've got to figure out what is the best data to look at. And I think what we've been doing this week is trying to refocus our lens. Maybe instead of looking at how they did on the test, what are they doing today? How often are they here? Are they here? Should we quantify that, John? I don't care. Find a pattern. Find the pattern that helps you see what we need to see and celebrate that we're looking for the right pattern. 4th dysfunction. lesson design / redesign. That laminated doesn't mean done. That because something's working well doesn't mean it couldn't be better. At the same time, we should say, should we make this better? No. Leave it alone. It's working, and the energy it would take to make it better and the very minimal return we might get from making it more cognitive or engaging is not worth it. I love when Dan talked about not knowing math facts. I have a confession to you. I don't know my sevens. I do not know my sevens because my mother had a hysterectomy. No, you're wondering, I know. So when I was in the 3rd grade, the week we got to 7, my mother had to go in for an emergency hysterectomy, and I stayed with my grandmother and didn't go to school for a week. Because of my mother's ovaries, I am challenged with my sevens. So I have to find a way around my sevens. And yet I've been very successful, and nobody has asked me, how are you with your sevens? So again, finding that balance. Big question then. So what deserves our analysis? So what deserves reflection about should we move it or not? What is the experiment we should do? What should we redesign? Not all curriculum is equal. Not all curriculum matters. We all teach stuff that nobody's gonna use ever again. Now, I find that rarer in kindergarten than in trigonometry. Because most people do use all their letters. Nope, I only use 20. I'm differentiated. So we got to look at curriculum. And every time we look at curriculum or we look at our past practice, I always think of hoarders. I don't know if you've seen the TV show Hoarders. My wife's mother, my mother-in-law, has a little bit of a hoarding problem. We continue to say we're going to clean her house, but she keeps living in it. And we can't find her sometimes. But the reality is she's afraid she might need it someday. She is paralyzed because she might need that thing and won't throw it out. It's time to let some stuff go. The rhombus, not that important. Fractional understanding, more important. So I might want to power up fractional understanding, but comparing a square to a rhombus to a trapezoid, maybe not so much. Both could be made more engaging, I'm sure, but what's worth it? So instead of being curricular hoarders, I want us to recognize this first. Curriculum wins. Curriculum is more important than teaching and learning. This is hard to say, because I could teach with greater efficacy and my kids could learn more, but if it's not the right stuff, to what end? And I have seen schools, we want to make this more engaging. Yeah, they don't need it. So they will have more fun learning something that is not application. What we teach matters more than how we teach it. Why we're teaching matters more than what we're teaching. Are we building thinkers? Are we building citizens? Do we want kids who are mentally and physically well? So we're in the right work, but we have jumped ahead a little bit to talk about instructional practice. And so I want to just slow you down for just a minute. If you haven't done this work yet, it's the work you need to do. I'm going to say this even as we're asking you to write a school improvement plan, knowing that some of the work hasn't been done yet by the division. And that is deciding what matters most. A lot of people ask this in the exit interviews, so I'm going to say this. We have been building curriculum this way since 1998. You heard it from the panel. It's on the test. Let's teach that in school and maybe hope it's relevant to life. That has been our focus. And it's not just Virginia, it's across the country. And in an effort to leave no child left behind, we left a lot of thinking behind. A lot of thinking. So we guaranteed content for kids. We did not guarantee viable thinking in that content for kids. And I know some of fourth grade social studies in Virginia and the SOLs. I remember the first time I did a lesson in fourth grade in this state, and I had 3 tribes, 3 languages, 3 geographic regions, right? Why? Why? Because what I want you to know is this. People live here and people live there. And when you live here near the stream, you probably fish. When you live over here in the mountains, you probably hunt. If you live over here, you need words that describe the water and how to fish and the name of the fish. If you live over here, you need words for arrow and bow and bear. And because you live in different places, you have different languages. Because you live in different places, you also have different cultures. You don't have the seasonal things that they have on top of this mountain. That's why we were teaching the native tribes of Virginia. Or were we doing it because some politicians said they need to know these tribes and these tribes and these tribes? I don't know from whence it came. I have to figure out why I'm teaching it. My grandmother's culture is different from my other grandmother's culture. We behave differently. It didn't take me long as a child to figure that out. When we were at Grandma Eulin's house, you said, "Can I help you make breakfast, Grandma?" And that was the interaction we had. In Grandma Antonetti's kitchen, you didn't go to the kitchen. You just said, "Could I have a..." "Well, I'll make it for you, baby." And we learned that she was Big Grandma for a reason. Because you showed love through food. But over here, you showed love through working together. I'm so glad I had both of those cultures. So if we flip this, I'm going to ask you this. What does a 24-year-old need to know that you teach? Because if a 24-year-old who is not in school, I don't even care what the career is, who is not in school, will use something this month that you've taught, that's what we rigor up. If you have, how many of you did a system of equations problem in your life the last couple of months? Or found the interior angles of a polygon? Anybody? Then that is not longevity to be rigored up. Unless I have extra time. But I only have 178 days of teaching, and I'm going to take out 8 of those because the 8 days I'm going to come to school barely there. You know what I'm talking about? I'm going to be almost dead sick. Or mentally just in a bad place, but I'm going to come because it's easier than writing subplans. Okay. Stay on level 1, 2 on those days, or give them a level 3 where it doesn't matter what the answer is. Okay, so we're going to flip it. We're going to start with what do people need? What do we know as professionals? What's on the test? So it's going to look like this. We're going to go through our curriculum. And again, this is a tedious process, but it's really important and it informs the other work we're doing. I'm going to look through my SOLs. And working silently with my table mates around me from my grade level, we're going to go through every content objective standard and put a C next to it if 24-year-olds have to know it to be successful in the world. Do 24-year-olds have to add fractions with unlike denominators? I'm going to say yes. Somebody on my team, I hope, says no, so that I hope we have to argue. Really? They don't? Don't they? Really? I want to have that moment. And the problem is I might even want to volunteer a spouse or somebody who's not in school to say, no, you're still thinking like teachers. I don't. Or I do. So we put a C next to it. We run all the way through the curriculum and decide what are the C's. Then we stop. We get up. We have a break. We go back through the curriculum guide, through the SOLs one more time. We say, this time, working by ourselves, put a T next to everything you think. They don't need it the way the standard asks it, but the thinking in that standard is lifelong. I'll give you a perfect example. The learner will be able to identify patterns of ionization in the periodic trend, extrapolate a principle, and generate a possibility for the unknown first ionization energy of a lanthanide series element. Is that a C? You guys done that in the last couple of years? It is not a C. Listen to what I said again. Read the periodic table, figure out what's going on, decide a pattern, repeat it. Do you do that? I think we do that on a daily basis. We make predictions about what we're going to wear today, what we're going to do today, based upon, I found a trend, I found a pattern. So I don't think it has a C, but I think reading the periodic table and predicting trends gets a T. And honestly, I want my PLC to have an English teacher in my science PLC to say, John, I would agree with that. I don't know much about the periodic table, but I know that anytime you see a graphic, you have to figure out what it's saying to you. So yeah, I'm going to go with that, John. That just sounds like a good reading longevity of thinking standard. So I put a T next to that one. We go all the way through. We stop, we take a break, we walk outside. We come back again and we do this. I need 5th grade to come to 4th grade now. So 5th grade, I want you to work on this before you come to me. 5th grade, you get to tell me, I'm going to skip a couple slides. You get to tell me the 5 things you will guarantee in 5th grade science if I guarantee these 3 coming out of 4th grade. I want you to look at that ratio. I want the grade level above me not to tell me the 19 things I need to send them so that they can be successful. Tell me the 5 things you value most in your 5th grade curriculum and the 3 predicators coming out of 4th. In other words, you're promising to do more than you're asking me to prepare. And what I know is, I've done this K-12 many years. Typically what happens is when 5th grade says, in math, we can guarantee this if they knew this and this if they knew that, and we could really do these 2 if they knew that. Interestingly enough, when 4th grade was working, these were 3 of the things they said they thought were the most important too. And then 3rd grade has these, it just builds. It's almost like systemically we already know what we haven't articulated. So we go back then, and in this list, I've got C's on my document, I've got T's on my document, and I have 3 N's. We read it one more time, and this is hard to say. We read it one more time and put an A next to everything that is tested. And in Virginia, that's a lot of A's. You got some big OA going on. If we do content thinking, and then you got a big, never mind. Make up your own joke. So why did we do this? For this reason. We are now going to decide relevance. Still can't give kids relevance, but I've got to decide what should be relevant to children, what needs to be relevant. We just said those things that have a C and a T and an N and an A must be made relevant. We have to engage kids in those because they need that content. They need to think that way. Next year's depending upon it, and it's on the test. And then anything that got 3 letters, A, N, C, T, whatever combination of 3 letters, that's the 2nd tier. Assessed but doesn't have another letter, or it's 2 letters and one of them is assessment, I want to still look at those because I've learned, especially in elementary, sometimes the assessment is so focused on the minuscule and the trivial and the pedantic that I have to look at this. I'll give you an example. In the state of Indianapolis, 3rd grade, students will be able to recognize the schwa vowel sound. Have you had to recognize the schwa in the last couple of years? When you were at that party, did somebody say, pass me the schwa? Okay, it is not longevity of content. It is not longevity of thinking. I don't know what it is, but in Indianapolis, or in Indiana, there are 5 questions on the schwa. Schwa has more single questions than almost anything else in their 3rd grade content. Guess what? I'm going to teach me some schwa. And you know when I'm going to do it? I'm going to do 1 day in September. I'm going to do 1 day on the schwa in November. I'm going to do a little bit of schwa in February. Right before the test, we're going to do, remember that schwa? Do some. And I'm not going to make it engaging, and I'm not going to make it rigorous. But bigger than the schwa and the process that we want to do is now say, okay, if we know that this is priority order, how do we then turn it into rigor? So we drop the rigor divide and say this. The things that we should be working on collaboratively to make rigor had all 4 of the letters. And the things that had 3 or a combination of priority indicators or relevance indicators need to be taught on the other side if I have time as well. The others, don't kill yourself. Enjoy your family more. Be happy. Leave it over there, you're done. Let it go. Mention it, move on. Don't make it better. Now, those things with the 4 letters, that's when we need to be like AA. That's when we need to come together as a 4th grade team or a 3rd grade team and say, how can we do it? Making sure, this is really important, making sure that as kids are thinking in that content piece, they're thinking in the content. not just accepting it, they're making meaning of the C. And because it has the next letter T, that they know that it's about the thinking. And I'm going to post my objective differently. I'm not going to say you're learning to blah, 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 blah. You're using blank in order to learn how to think this way, so that my content leads to the thinking. And if kids said, when will we ever use this? I might default and say, next year when you have Mrs. Jones, I promise you, she is a stickler on this. I'm not going to say that, because that put Mrs. Jones in a bad spot. Boys and girls, if we're doing this right, you can see the relevance. You know your mom and dad have done this. You see a struggle with this. Even as I'm walking down the hall, you know that I think this way. That's where we have to be collaborative. And then the magic of this, and I'm always amazed at how it happens. Fenwick English said this in the 70s, but I didn't know if I could trust him. He said that when you look at those things and you start with this, I will bet you that 5 to 8 things have all 4 letters. 5 to 8 in a content area will have those letters. Great. That's 1 per month. That is almost a PLC cycle. How are we going to plan that thing for a CNTA? And then if it's just 5, I'm going to ask you dig a little into the next group too. Because one of our school improvement plans should be to decide in the content curriculum what is worth rigoring up, what is worth moving over. And the answer is 8 to 10 things when we are really comfortable with this. And then should we move over here? No. Trust the process. You already said that these things on this side can just stay over there on the 1-2 side. So we're not going to come together to plan how to have kids practice something that we could all already just do. That's a waste of professional energy. I want to put it over here in 8 to 10 things. And I have seen some content curricula where, guess what? Only one thing had all 4. Yay. That could be a focus of our school improvement work this year. I want you to just react to the idea of the curriculum work that has to be done, whether we've done that or not, and how it connects to the instructional work. At your table, just make some sort of connection, and then we're going to go to break in a few minutes. So one of the things I believe, as a veteran of the classroom and principalship, but more importantly, even just as somebody who has had the great luxury of seeing 17,000 tasks while kids did them, one of the things that I've seen is I just don't believe kids articulate thinking wrong. They may not have the words yet, but if they can see something, they will make sense out of it if we give them the right amount of time. We sometimes say we need to scaffold them. I don't think scaffolding is nearly as important as time to talk your idea out until it makes sense to you or doesn't. All of us as human beings have been in that moment where we're saying something and we just stop and we go, never mind, never mind. And somebody says, what? I said, no, I just realized I don't know what I'm saying. I just realized that what I'm saying is not true. I've got to back that up. I was so busy doing this that as I said it, clarity came. One of the things I also believe is if we trust the learners, and that's what I heard up there too in the panel, was if I design a solid task of level 3, I now have to trust the learners can think. Not what they will think, but that they will think. And when we've used this process, every time I do this process, I get nervous, especially, and I'm going to say this, with secondary mathematics. I love math teachers, but secondary mathematics teachers as a whole make me a little nervous the night before. When I work with secondary mathematics teachers, the first thing we do is we analyze a poem by William Wordsworth. And they go, this is math, this is math. I said, what's wrong? He said, I don't like poetry and I don't want to do that. Great. This is the way many students feel in your content area. It is my job now to say analysis is analysis, whether it's math, science, language arts, science, whatever. You're going to look at something and make sense. What my math teachers are telling me is the way they were taught to analyze a poem, they did not like. It's not that they don't like poetry yet. It's that they were made to feel something that is not an emotional connection. So I will say to my math teachers, we're going to do this poem, and I want you to look at this thing, and at the end of this, I heard it up there. What's the emoji? You read this first stanza. How are you feeling? They'll say, well, I'm happy. No, I'm sad. No, I'm confused. Great. Those are all truths. that's making sense. And we'll continue to make sense and build on that. Every time I do this protocol, and I just did it a couple weeks ago in Washington, I promise the people who hire me that when we finish, we will find 8 to 10 things that belong over here. But John, what if we find 29? You won't. You won't. I've never done a content area where 29 things end up needing this. It's usually 8 to 10. And look at that. If we have 8 to 10 with 4, then I say, don't worry about the others. Do the ones that have the 4 indicators. Well, we only had 3 with CTNA with all 4 indicators. Then start to go down into the next list. And if you think you have more than 8 to 10, you'll know where that mark is. So it's a very procedural way to work through content at a level 2 to make decisions that we probably already were ready to articulate. The other thing about doing this systemically in a job alike, though, is then we decide what the vertical alignment is of rigor for kids. So regardless of where they come from or where they go, we have decided and articulated what we expect over here and what is absolutely okay to just leave over here. A lot of the exit slips referred to the SIP process, the school improvement process, and building a plan. I'm going to suggest this. We have used SIP as a plan in the past. This year, please don't call it a plan. Call it a process. Now, a process like taking a trip, a process of planning an event, a process still has steps and procedures in it. But I don't want you to get locked into your school improvement plan. And we have permission from the upper administration and from the division level staff to say your plan should help you get where you're going. Don't overuse it as a metric. We check off, check off, check off. Don't use it as a check off or 85%. I go back to the obesity model that we talked about. A school improvement process that would have changed the obesity problem in Sheridan, Arkansas, or in our state would have said, this week kids will walk 10 minutes. This week they'll walk 10, run 2. This week they will walk 10, run 4. If we just calendar that out, and I don't want a school improvement plan that says we will change body mass index by 2%. Because that's an exit indicator. Instead of a daily, I can look at it and see if we're making it. So when you're thinking about the school improvement plan this afternoon and working on that, think about the things that we could calendar and say, we'll see that. We can see that happening in our school. It might look like this. Maybe we had 8 people walking last year. By October, half the staff will have been in other classrooms. Maybe we looked for just the 4 questions. Maybe we haven't looked at all. Well, then the October step is to look at what we want to look at. From the C5W Learning Walks form, decide what part of that is this year's part. When Bruce showed the airplane model of building it as we go, I love that. But they already had the wings on that plane. Did you notice that? They weren't putting seats in before wings because they had already put the important part in that made it a plane. If in our school improvement planning, we look at the Learning Walks thing and say, what's the part that we think professionally makes the most sense as our next step? We probably won't screw that up. I want to share with you a couple things that, again, questions that have come up. We have a principal in Boise, Idaho, who I think was the first person I saw who thought, you know what, if we're going to do this, everybody needs to know what it is. Everybody needs to know what Learning Walks are. So I want to show you a video that she shows to her kids at the beginning of the school year. When she was first the principal of South Junior High, she showed everybody. The next year she just showed incoming 6th graders. It's also online so parents can see it on their website. Your students may talk to you about Learning Walks. This is what this looks like. I want to show you the video that Betty shows because I think it just speaks to, yeah, this should be fun. She's going to ask the questions, maybe not using these words about what are you doing. She's going to ask questions about what are you learning by doing that. She's going to ask the next question of why do you need to learn this? Who would use this? Where is this important in life? And again, if I'm in 7th grade, 10th grade, 1st grade, I may not know what life is yet. But do I have a way to see it? So I want you to look and listen for the questions she asks, but know that she will not follow the script because she's going to stay with Jaden, the student she's talking to. She may be all over this. She may ask questions specific to an engaging quality. She may ask something specific to critical thinking. She may ask something specific to citizenship, depending upon what's happening. She stays responsive to the students in the process. So here is Betty Hoogland and Jaden. So I'm curious, how many of you, when you were listening that, are already going, I just heard an engaging quality. I'm wondering about the cognition. Because immediately we should start to put things together. We're going to take a break in 10 minutes, but before we go on, I'm going to skip this video. I'm going to ask you to do this. What do you think about the idea of sharing the protocol with students? I'm amazed at how often, as professionals, we have professional development without children present. Can you imagine a surgeon learning their skills without a cadaver or a patient? And now, as teachers, we need live children in the work. But we should be transparent. Kids should know what we're talking about. The language of C5W should become the language of instruction. This is a critical thinking moment, which means you will find something that is true. It's a personal response moment, so you may find a truth that somebody else did not find. When you share with your learning with others, I want you to come to consensus and prioritize by evaluating all the responses. That language should be a part of what we're doing. Second piece is, before we take the break, I want us to go ahead and do analysis of what we just heard Jaden say. So I'm going to go back and let's use the C5W form, if you will. Does Jaden know what she's doing? Yep, and she's done, doesn't she? She knows what she's doing. What about learning? She knows she's learning facts about Jupiter. What about relevance? I'm not sure I heard relevance. This is the moment where we might have to articulate, what are we calling relevance? I don't know if Betty asked the question of relevance. I can safely say doing and learning is there. Now I'm going to jump to cognition, critical thinking. What was Jaden's thought that was hers? I don't know if you saw it. Being able to tan might be a moment of a thought. This is a tough one because when I look at this, since I didn't hear the kids as they were thinking, it's already done. Since I didn't hear kids thinking, I don't know if it was a moment of analysis. I heard her say it was all about the facts. So I'm not sure if it's anything other than accepted knowledge about the planet put onto a poster. I'm going to actually default. If I have to use the metric, I'm going to say, I think that's a level 2. I think by saying, since it's so close to the sun and it's so hot, you can tan. That's a comprehension piece that shows understanding of what close to the sun and hot means. It's not her thought yet. Does that make sense? So I would be circling recall, understand, procedures. That's where I think she is. That's where I think the task asked her to go. Again, that's not a negative. That's just what I think we are. That's where we are. What engaging qualities did you hear? I am going to ask you to talk about that at the table. Did you hear any engaging qualities in that work? Because Jaden said she liked it. And I have 5 other videos of kids who don't look like Jaden who you would think, oh, I bet he doesn't like it. Who liked it? Why are they liking it? Would you want to do this task? How many would want to do the task? How many wouldn't want to do the task? Then see, I bet there are some engaging qualities, but I don't know how they're adding up yet. So just run through the list of engaging qualities and tell me what you think we just saw. I would almost encourage you, walk with nothing in your hand the first couple of times you do it, just to get in the classrooms. Here's what's going to happen, though, for kids and for teachers. When an adult has walked into the classroom in the past, it meant something. It always meant somebody's looking at somebody. I might be here because, oh, we've got a kid over there. I think that's the behavioral specialist. He's probably watching Darren. Or I have walked into schools when they don't tell kids I'm coming, and I'm the first person who's ever done this, and kids say, what do you want? What do you want? Why are you here? I'm just looking at learning. Really? No, who are you? It's interesting because I've been doing this long enough that in kindergarten I have heard this. Are you Bill Clinton? No. But I've also heard, are you George Bush? Okay, I kind of got both of those, but for a while I also got, are you Barack Obama? And now I'm getting, are you Donald Trump? No, I'm not. I'm not. I have some big hair, but no. What I learned from that is kids think a tie means president. They haven't had enough people in their classroom to look at learning yet. So they think somebody is coming in who's really important. No, when I come in, you're important. That's why I'm here. Because this is my chance to not have the burden of having to manage the circus. I get to just come in and watch the acts. It's about me. So when my colleague says, so what do you think about what you saw? Thank you. No, really, what did you see and what do you think? I'm saying thank you because I got to see kids and talk to kids about their learning when I didn't plan it. I didn't have the burden of monitoring it. I just got to think, what's the value of that task? And please hear that again. What is the value of the task? I'm not saying, does that task have a value? What is the value of that task? A professional educator planned it for kids. I don't know the whole content and curriculum scope and sequence and the intent. I'm trusting the system. I'm trusting my colleague that what she did or what he did has meaning. My job is to see if I can find it so I can see how quickly I can use the components of making meaning back in my own shower, if you will, when I'm planning the next piece. Donna? Where's Donna? I have to tell you, we bonded when you're up there. Just because the language that I heard was the language that I know kids value more when you were talking about the plan. And I love that you didn't know if it would work, but you trusted the kids. Where's my foreign language teacher? I lost her. Yeah, same thing. You said something really important. Do you know what I know? Kids will think better when they think they're helping us. When we ask a question, most of the time, kids know the reason we're asking the question to see if they know it. If we ask a question like, I don't know, and they'll say, really, you don't? Then they'll help me. So when I walk into a classroom, now I have this added benefit when I'm in a school. People don't know what I do. So if we're in a science class and somebody says, we're doing this science experiment, I say, so what are you learning by doing that? Well, we're learning about isotopes. Well, what is an isotope? Well, aren't you a science teacher? No, I'm not. I mean, I lie to them. Because when I act ignorant, they help me. And sometimes I'm acting ignorant, and sometimes I'm not acting. And I like when the kids don't know which it is. So one of the things we get out of this process, forget the metric, forget us moving our practice, is immediately students start to see, the guy from the science wing was here in language arts today. He cares about my learning in language arts? Really? One of the things that I know happens when a school starts doing this process of just walking, forget the metric, just walking, discipline referrals go down. Because I don't belong to those 5 teachers, it seems like I belong to more now. And the ownership of my community gets bigger and maybe safer. And I'm okay when a kid says, I don't know why we're doing this. I said, really? No, I don't know why we're doing this at all. Well, I don't either because I don't teach this. I'm sure there's a reason for this. I mean, my job is not to say, oh my gosh, you have a bad teacher. No, because I have taught class 3 days in a row and then asked kids why they were doing something. I don't know. Really? Did you not see the first 5 minutes when I was dancing up there? And so one of the things I know is there are people in the room who are saying, well, if this relevance thing is more important, I should start my lesson by, here is why you're learning this. Here's where you will learn this. I said the first day, you can't give people relevance. They might repeat your thoughts. I know this. If I ask a couple of kids, why are you learning this? And they say, well, because someday I might want to, blah, 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 blah. And if they say the same blah, 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 that's not theirs. Relevance crosses over. Oh, a couple more things. I'm really serious about the SIP plan being more of a calendar. By October, I just picked a date, let's make sure that half the faculty has had a chance to walk and be walked. Or by October, let's make sure that in job alikes across the division and within our building, that teachers have taken a rather typical lesson and played with powering it up, experimented, and reflected. Or before October, let's collect 3 samples, and anyone can submit them, of work we think is an exemplar for personal response in every content area. And we're going to put them on the shared drive so everybody can see them. And I'm going to ask math teachers to look at the language arts to get out of their comfort zone and see the personal response in that discipline, the personal response in this department and this one, because as we look across 3 departments with 3 very different examples of personal response, we're going to get personal response better. I'm going to be really honest. I had no idea what kind of teacher I was until I left the classroom. I assumed what was natural and normal for me was natural and normal for other people. And first day of my principalship, I became a principal in a school that was going to be closed down because of low achievement. Arkansas had a really intense school improvement model that said, you look at the schools in your geographic area and you decide who's the highest performing in a school district of your makeup. And if you are not where they are, you have 3 years to close the gap, or your entire district will be dissolved. The division will be dissolved, buildings will be sold. In Arkansas, over 7 years, we closed 1/4 of our school divisions because they couldn't make the bar. We were in our 3rd year, about to be closed down. I was teaching earth science again in a new school for me, knowing it's only going to last a year. Middle of the school year, the principal dies. They asked me to step up, not because I'm trained as a principal, but because nobody's going to come in with 1 semester left. So the State Department sent a school improvement specialist to meet with the new principal on January the 3rd, and she said, you're going to need to evaluate your teachers. Your school is really underperforming, and it could be the quality of your teachers. And I just remember saying, okay, did nobody tell you as you were driving to my district that you were going to meet with somebody who yesterday was a teacher? Because you have just pissed me off. You can say that to the State Department, you can. And she said, well, I'm sorry, I'm telling you that if you don't have every evaluation done, dotted and crossed, and sent in by the 14th of February, we will start closing procedures on the 15th. And I said, well, I don't know how to evaluate a teacher. She said, it's easy. You just use this 12-page appraisal instrument. You meet with them, go in the classroom, mark what you see, tell them one thing to do better and one thing they did well, and then you're finished. I said, but I'm going to go into content areas I don't even know. And she said, you just have to work the form, sir. I said, really? The goal's the form? So I thought, well, I'll try it. So I called my friend, Ev Dobbs, because she teaches language arts, and she's my best friend, and I'm safe with Ev. So I said, Ev, I have never evaluated a teacher in my life. Would you be my guinea pig and let me evaluate your class tomorrow? And that's the way science people talk. Be my guinea pig, let me evaluate, let me experiment. And she responded the way English teachers do. John, I would be highly honored to serve as a benchmark upon this your learning journey. And I was like, is that a yes? She said, but of course, my friend. Now listen, I understand typically that there's a pre-conference, but I say nay to the pre-conference. We're starting a new unit. Why should you know where we're going when the children don't? I will see you promptly at 8, my friend. Adieu, adieu. Okay. So the next day I walked in with the metric. And I was already overwhelmed by the metric, so I sat on the table back and I'm thinking, flip, 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 flip. There's a lot to look for. And then Ev started the way I guess English teachers do. Young people, authors, writers, thinkers. Last quarter, thesis. Developing an idea. Elaborating with details and example, logos, ethos, pathos, until all could see the brilliance of our idea. Now instead of elaboration, we aim for brevity, brevity, brevity. With the rhythm, with the rhythm, with the rhythm. You've guessed it. Today we begin our unit on poetry. We shall read poetry. We shall write poetry. We shall become poetry. And I'm like, oh my gosh, where do you write that down? Look at her go. Look at her go. Little 8th grade kid next to me said, she is on today. I said, I know. Where do you write that down? Page 11 of the Arkansas Teacher Appraisal Instrument says evidence of student engagement. Egocentric evidence, analytical evidence, cognitive evidence. I'm like, what? I just want to write, she is really good. And as I tried to figure out what those words meant, I thought, okay, I am too far out of my element. I can't do this yet because I don't know what to value. So I just looked at Ev and I gave her 2 thumbs up and I walked out. I thought, I'm out. I'm going to math or science. Right next door is Phyllis Roden. I know math and science. I'm going to Phyllis Roden because Phyllis Roden is easy. Here's what I know about Phyllis Roden. Phyllis Roden has no energy and no personality. I mean, I'm not talking behind her back. I told her that at the Christmas party. I said, Phyllis, I love you, but you have no energy, no personality. And she said, what are you going to do about it? But here's the paradox. Not only with her general ed kid, but also with her gifted math class and with her special ed resource kids, she has the highest scores in the county in all 3 groups. How is she doing that when she is 1 breath away from a coma? So I walked into class with my clipboard and she said, observation, huh? I said, yes, ma'am, it's just the process by which. She said, whatever, have a seat back there. Shh. Well, I didn't know you could shush the principal. But I sat down and I got quiet. And then she began class. Okay, boys and girls, come on in. Today's Tuesday, group day, yay. Look, on your tables. On your tables, there are 3 sheets of paper, yellow, pink, and white. Pick up the yellow sheet of paper. The yellow sheet of paper shows the cost of carpet by the square foot, tile by the square yard, blah, 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 blah. You can read it, okay? It also shows the cost of baseboards in linear foot measure. Everybody got it? Great. Now this is the special ed class. Okay, now what I want you to do is I want you to pick up the pink sheet of paper. The pink sheet of paper is a budget. Your group has 3 days to redesign the 8th grade building. Hallways, classrooms, closets, everything has to be refloored. I don't care what you floor, but that pink sheet is your budget. It's a grant from the State Department. Spend all of it. You make 100 if you on the floor and the baseboard spend 100% of the budget. If you only spend 90% of the budget, you make it 90. If you go over budget 40%, you made it 60. Don't go over budget, okay? All right. Now, the other sheet of paper, the white sheet of paper, is just a blueprint of the school. I have no idea if you're going to use it. I'm just telling you, you will not have time to measure everything. Are there any questions? I didn't think so. Ready to go. And so all the kids start to talk, and as I'm trying to decide, where do you write that down? Because that did not look like Ev's. And as I'm flipping through the form, the group of kids in front of me start to talk. Hey, what should we do? Should we divide up? Well, why would we divide up? Well, some of us can work on area and some of us can work on perimeter. Yeah, but you don't divide up. You have to measure first because area and perimeter are based upon the same measurements. Yeah, but she just said we're not going to have time to measure. Okay, think like a mathematician. I think we should sample. We should get some sample data. So why don't we all go measure 4 things and come back? And if the measurements match up to the blueprint, then we'll just use the blueprint and not have to measure anymore. Okay, that's a good strategy. And then we'll divide up. Why do you keep saying divide up? Well, you know if we split it up, we're going to spend more money on area than we do perimeter. Kid grabbed that other sheet of paper and said, no, look at this. What if we buy this really cheap tile and this really expensive mahogany baseboard? We could spend more on the outside than the inside. Okay. Every group of kids was having that same conversation. And about that time, I think Phyllis needed my attention because she began to snap at me. Well, I didn't know you could snap at a principal either, but I looked up like what? And she said, she walked over to a dry erase board and wrote 1.6.9. Students will be able to recognize and articulate the relationships between area and perimeter in a real world setting. Boom. And I remember flipping over and wrote, posted or objective. Crap. Why am I getting so excited that I can fill in the metric? The excitement that I should be having is, did you hear what the kids just said? How did she get there and not move? I get it now. It's not her personality. It's not her style. It's the tasks she designs. And so I had an emergency faculty meeting that day, and I said, here are blank observation forms for this year. Find the one with your name on it. You'll notice they're blank right now, okay? They are dated differently, so it looks like I did them over 6 weeks. Please, now, write up a lesson you've taught, you're going to teach, or I don't even care if you ever teach it. Just write up a lesson. Have a friend with a different color pen evaluate it now. Don't bother reading it. Tell them what numbers you want them to mark, what comments you want them to give. We are now done with teacher appraisal. Social Studies Department Chair Joyce Mecon raises her hand. Melissa Sue of Melissa Sue's. I said, Joyce, what's wrong? She said, John, I am uncomfortable with this. I said, why, Joyce? She said, John, I believe this is illegal. And I said, Joyce, I know it is. We are done hoping appraisal moves us. We've been doing it since the beginning of the time. We have 12% basic battery proficiency in this building. But you know what else I saw today? We already have the answers right here. So Joyce, what I'm going to ask you to do is I'm going to ask you and your social studies colleagues to come with me on your next planning period. And we're going to go into math classes to watch kids we teach who might in mathematics come alive when they won't in social studies. And I'm going to ask you this question. Why is math better? No, I'm not going to ask you that. Why are they doing more for her? I'm not going to ask you that. What's going on in that task that causes them to give energy that we could take back to social studies? Math teachers, we're going to walk science. Science, we're going to go watch vocational. Vocational, we're going to the fine arts. We already have the answers in this building. We just haven't asked the right questions, and the form's killing us. The way the school improvement program worked in Arkansas was if your test scores didn't come up, you could get what they called reprieval. You could get out of school improvement or get another year. If when these two men, they were called the special masters, when the special masters came from the University of California, Berkeley and walked your school in May, if they saw cognitive engagement at a higher level than your test scores suggest, you don't get closed down. They came in May and they walked our classes. I wasn't allowed to go with them. They came to me at the end of the day and said, you're getting reprieve. We're not closing you down. I said, that is excellent news. How come? Why? And they said, because we saw cognitive engagement at a higher level. How have you been doing it? And I said, basically it's the task rubric, or we called it the engagement cube. We do something from here, and something from here, and something from here. And once a week, the teachers get together by department, by course, and say, what's the most important thing kids need to learn this week? How can we get it over here? I said, and we've been doing it for 19 weeks in a row. He said, well, please keep doing that. I said, I think we will. I think we will. 2 years later, we went from 12% basic proficiency to 73%. It was the most growth anyone had in Arkansas. And so people started coming to us and we said, we just walked it across here. We took the task. We didn't get different kids or different teachers. We already had the right answers. We just hadn't worked the question yet. This is where I hope you get a chance to play with your SIP. This is where I hope you guys get to calendar and build. Don't let the metric win. Don't let the reporting win. Because I know this. If you give a mouse a cookie, he'll want a glass of milk. If you give a teacher a checklist, she wants everything checked off. Nobody does anything 100% of the time. It's balance. At your table, just respond to the idea that the metric may be part of our work, but it may also be a delayed part of our work. I want you to just talk about right now your reaction to where do we go next? I know you're going to take that to school improvement. I want you to just play with it right now. So as we move forward with this idea of the C5W and making them come alive and be more articulated, more intentional in our design, one of the first defaults is, so I'm going to go see other English teachers as an English teacher. No, you're going to go see math teachers. Because I want you to see a math teacher, if you're an English teacher, or a math teacher seeing an English teacher who has kids who won't engage for you, but engage for somewhere else. And I want to be really cognizant of, is it just because they're interested in language arts? What makes a kid interested in English but not interested in math? The same cognition can occur in both. So is it they like words better than numbers? That could very well be. Is there more anxiety with numbers than words or vice versa? That could be as well. I want to get rid of those layers and look at what did my colleague design for that English teacher that caused my non-committal, non-engaged, non-motivated, non-interested, whatever you want to call it, math kid to lose the rest of the world why he did that. Because I need to take that quality, not the task, ask, not the content. I can't steal that, but the quality back. So let me share one that I saw a while back in the state of Virginia. This was, I was in Montgomery County. This is the 12th grade British Lit Standard, I believe. Explain how the sound of a poem, rhyme, rhythm, onomatopoeia, repetition, alliteration, assonance, parallelism, supports the subject, mood, and the theme. Pick the rigor word. Do not pick a verb. Do not pick a verb. Verbs are dime a dozen. Where will I get to have my thought? The rhyme scheme? Nope, that's already been determined by the poet. The alliteration? Nope, that's already been determined by the poet. The subject? Nope, probably already determined. Mood. I could even say, language arts teachers help me, but I think tone is actually even the author's. Mood is mine. Mood is mine. That's the moment that I get to think my thought. And if I'm a math kid and I'm in English and I don't like this, when you say to me, John, don't worry about your answer, I'm going to ask you to read the first stanza of a poem, and you tell me your emotional word. Just write it down. Here we go. Ready? Jabberwocky by Lewis Carroll. I would like to read this to you, but if I read it to you, I will tell you my mood. I cannot read this poem to you. Please read just the first stanza. On your imaginary tablet or on a post-it note, write down what you feel. Mood is how the poet makes you feel. How you feeling after reading that? You can write anything that's true. Don't tell anybody, but how you feel. How do you feel? Now, part of rigor in reading is you. Part of rigor in reading is author or poet. So once you tell me how you're feeling, I'd like you to do one more thing. Why? Point to the words. Point to the rhyme scheme. Point to something that is making you feel that. Is anybody's mood or what you're feeling coming out of the first stanza of this poem excitement? Okay? If it's excitement, I bet I can figure out what words they are. How many think, oh, I'm starting to feel a little scared? Not about reading more poetry, but about what's in the poem. How many wrote, I'm just damn confused? Okay, I know what you're circling. Brillig, Geyer, Gimbal, Mimsy, Borogrove, Mome, Rats, out. I don't know what those words mean. Why is Lewis Carroll doing that? I hope this whole poem is not a poem with words I don't know. So if you wrote confused, that is a valid personal response of analysis. Because he did this, I feel this. Now, I haven't asked my big question. That was just the entry. You get to start thinking first. Now we're going to read a little bit further. Please read the next two stanzas. I just want to ask this simple question halfway through the poem. How many have the same word in your head? How many need to revise your word? How many have the same word? How many want to revise your word? Okay? Let's read the next two stanzas. How many notice that the last stanza is exactly the same as the first stanza? One of my standard terms in my SOL was repetition. Something just repeated in this poem. At your table, because we don't have time to all do it, I'm cutting the cognitive engaging task short because you already started with one. What does putting that here and that here do for the way you feel about this poem? It can be the same, just one person at the table articulate as an example, and then we're going to wrap it up. So I'm a math teacher. I see that in a language arts class. Here's what my mind says. I just watched a kid from my math class who doesn't offer up the thought that he offered up just now with the confidence he offered up. His thought was he was confused at the beginning. When he saw confusion at the end, he said to his colleagues that the reason the poet chooses to repeat that is that he wants the reader to go from a moment of confusion where action then takes over, and action makes you feel like clarity is coming to your life. This is what the kid said. And then he leaves you again with that confusion so you know it's just a cycle. It's just like Star Wars. Dun da 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 da, dun da 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 da, which means tomorrow, next movie we can see da 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 da, and it goes again. Confusion, action, confusion, action. It just, resolution is just the next confusion. Another kid said, and I thought, I love that definition, but here's what I'm taking away. In my math class, the reason that kid is not engaging in my math class is I don't let him make sense till the end. He got to make sense, even if his sense was, I don't know what the hell the poet's doing. I'm feeling confused. That is the honest truth of analysis. It may not be the answer he thinks the English teacher wants. As a math teacher, I'm taking away. I need to let kids have that moment of truth finding in the problem and making sense, and not worry about the answer I think I want first, more frequently tomorrow. So here's what I'm going to say to you. Hey, thanks if you do this as a system, because this is going to move children and build the adults that I think we need. Thanks if you don't, because you came anyway. And an experience usually has impact on us. And from the majority of the exit slips, I know that even if I'm just thinking, I don't know if our school is going to move, but something in the way I'm approaching my lessons may change just a little bit. So thanks anyway. We're going to break for lunch. If I can help you in your SIPs, tomorrow we're going to have some time where I'm going to be walking around, so grab me if I can help, but you got this. Don't let the metric be the winner.